show. And with that, welcome to the Afternoon Constitutional. Back to you through YouTube. We haven't been kicked off yet. Trust me, I pay for this. I'm paying for this microphone, Mr. Chairman. And welcome back in. And you say, hold it, last couple of days, I was given a little note that YouTube is very strict about copyrighted music. So we had to find something else. That title is Compensating for Something, I believe, is what that is. And thank you for joining us. We've got a lot to get into this morning, this afternoon, pardon me. It's Old Habits Die Hard. And we're going to start off with the reconvened session, the veto session of the Virginia General Assembly with State Senator Bryce Reeves. Bryce, thank you for joining us. How are you doing, and how was the reconvened session for you from where you stood? Because I know I spoke to the governor this morning, and he seemed to be okay with how it all went down, but he thought it could have gone better.
Well, that's what you get when you have a Democrat Senate and a Republican House. I wish we could have got a few more of these things across the line, but the Democrats in the Senate just didn't want to go our way on a lot of that stuff. But I mean, I think we did a good job of sustaining his vetoes, and that takes 2/3 majority. So we had a good opportunity to do some of that, and we went through a lot of bills yesterday. It was a pretty long day because there were a lot of amendments. We had several to a couple of our bills, and actually the amendments were somewhat technical in nature, but absolutely kind of helped with one of the areas I've been working on the last couple of years, which is charitable gaming and trying to fix that up. And we wanted to allow them the opportunity to do pull tabs and some of their other things that they do in these charities when they have their conventions, and without having a runaway convention, so to speak. And I did catch your earlier comment, Joe. That sounded like Ronald Reagan, early Ronald Reagan when he was in
Yeah, let's not forget, though, Ronald Reagan said that during a primary convention. It was a debate, I believe, in New Hampshire, being run by the New Hampshire Republican Party, and his opponent on the dais was George Herbert Walker Bush.
Right.
And actually, wasn't he the one that coined the phrase voodoo economics as well? I mean, all those moments, they all get history equates them to Jimmy Carter, but a lot of them were George Herbert Walker Bush's thing. So let me ask you about the charitable gaming, because gaming is an issue that's come up. It's actually one of the issues that's hitting the Senate race, as Hermie Sadler wants to be the second NASCAR driver to be elected to an elected office in American history. He's missed it by about 6 months being first. But he has games. You get silver, I guess. But so the question is, gaming in general versus the charitable gaming, because a lot of people just hear gaming and they immediately jump. I don't know if I want to become Las Vegas. Yeah, exactly. So nuance it for us.
So, well, there's about I call them silos. There's like 7 different silos of gambling in Virginia. You know, gaming is gambling. So you have charitable gaming, call that one silo. You have casinos, that's another silo. You have historical horse racing, which are the rosies you see around town.
Mm.
That's a silo. Then you have lottery, that's a silo. Then you have sports betting online, that's another silo. And I'm missing, you have skill, right? Used to be
Right,
called
right.
gray machines, but now they're called skill. So that's 7. I think I'm missing one more. Um, but so the challenge that we have now is, we made the policy decision as a Commonwealth, we're moving forward with this stuff. The challenge is, how do you regulate it and keep everybody on their corners from trying to take over the other's industry? And when we initially had the Office of the Inspector General report with charitables, we found a $1.3 billion worth of profits with less than 4% going to charity. So it was no longer about charities, it was about greed. And there was a lot of fraudulent charities, and we cleaned it
Hmm.
up. And if you ask a lot of our folks, I call them the animal kingdom and the veterans organizations, the VSOs, because you have the Moose, the Elks, the Pythians, that section of
Hmm. Uh-huh.
fraternals. And then you have the VFWs, American Legions, Disabled American veterans, those sort of fraternals. And, we worked collectively. They understood what was in the balance there, and we fixed it, and they're thrilled. And I actually was talking with David Jones, who's one of the lobbyists for the Moose and the American Legion. And yesterday we had that revision to my bill, and Delegate Kristick's bill allowed them that opportunity to have pull tabs at their convention. But they are really working together. We're all working together to get rid of the fraud, so our charities can just keep going. And by cleaning up charitables, they don't have to worry about being under the eye anymore. I tell you where the real problem's coming in now is historical horse racing. There was a
Mm.
JLARC report that had a bunch of deficiencies. I carried a bill this last session that would deficiencies noted by JLARC that would allow them the opportunity to hire a consultant to tell them how to fix the problems that they have, because they have a year to get them done and fixed, or the General Assembly is going to come down and fix it for them.
So, what does that look like when you say the General Assembly is going to fix it for them? Because I mean, we see Bristol, Tennessee, has got a casino now, and Bristol, Virginia, is sitting on the other side of the street there, saying, "Oh, that's interesting." Yet, I have friends in Atlantic City who say, "Don't do it." I mean, it's a little bit of time, but eventually, it's going to all end up in tears.
Well, I think geographically, Southwest is much different than Portsmouth. We've seen that with the brand new Portsmouth casino that's opened up. They've had multiple fights within the casino. But I will say this: the casinos and lottery are probably the heaviest regulated,
Hmm.
in the sense of they have to provide a lot more security, they more personnel, their buildings, all that sort of stuff. Whereas HHR has a lot of deficiencies. There was a report that came out, a news report where a woman was assaulted, almost killed,
Oh my
and
gosh.
oh yeah, it's out of Richmond, and they had over 600 calls for service from the police force when they took over, and they just got bought out by Churchill Downs, which is a major player in historical horse racing,
Absolutely, yeah.
predominantly in Kentucky. But yeah, so we've got to make sure, if we're doing it, that it's safe for the patrons that are showing up, so they don't get mugged. And Priestick and I met with them the other day, and we were dumbfounded to find out that they don't run background checks on their employees.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, and so we mentioned that might be a good idea for them to do that. You know,
Call holy Danny Ocean, Batman. So the other side of that, you talk about. I don't know if syntax is the right word, but the the other part of the General Assembly, especially in this amendment/veto session, has been CBD, THC, the regulation, obviously the ability to collect sales tax on products sold at a store is still too complicated for the General Assembly. So we don't have the retail dispensaries yet. But talk about where we are because I know folks like David Ramadan were no, not David Ramadan, Greg Habib were lobbying pretty hard about the governor's regulations on THC and CBD products.
Well, there's a fine line between what gets you high and what's medicinal, right?
Hmm.
And so the argument there was, where does that line exist between the level of THC in a product where it has those different chemical abilities? And so, what happened was under Northam, they just flat out wanted to go. They bypassed even medical marijuana. All the people that had done the billions of dollars investment and just said we're going to recreationalize it, right? And it never got totally completed. Emmett Hanger had put in a bill in good faith. I helped co-patron the bill that kind of got hijacked by the marijuana folks that would deal just with CBD because
Okay.
CBD is really a phenomenal product, and there's kids that need it for epilepsy.
Hmm.
Richard Stewart spoke on the floor about a specific person that if they ban it all together, where do they get the
Right.
medicine, right? And so it has tremendous effects. We know that for our veterans with PTSD and how they deal with that. And so what we were trying to do is protect hemp. And I think that's what we did. And I think that's what the governor's amendments did. Um, you know, I think retail sales of marijuana will probably get taken up in the next General Assembly session. But I think what they tried to do now was, we had some deaths from CBDs that were put into gummy bears and those sort of things, and kids were
Yeah.
ingesting
Oh
them,
yeah.
right? And so there was a lot of safety stuff in that bill that we were trying to get that out of the hand where kids don't inadvertently take a bunch of CBD. And
Hmm.
then you have the levels at which we needed to balance out. I think it was 8 and 9. Those two levels, a CBD 8 and 9 is where 9 gets you high, 8 doesn't quite get you there,
Oh, it's
and
that
where we were
close.
going to land.
Wow. It's a,
Right.
yeah, and it's funny. I have some of my friends who believe in greater gun control, and they keep talking about common sense regulation on firearms in houses. I said, can we start with some common sense controls on the THC gummies in the house? And they get mad at me and they stop inviting me to their parties, Bryce.
You mean they
Uh,
don't lock them in a safe?
Yeah,
What?
I thought, I thought there was at very least a fingerprint or something that went on with it. But anyway, tongue out of cheek, Senator Bryce Reeves is on with us. Earlier today, you received an endorsement by Governor Youngkin for your reelection campaign.
Right.
BryceReeves.com. It's right there on the screen with you. Tell us, about what that entails. Is the governor said, you're my number one guy, or is it more just like, all right, we've got a lot of work to do and we need you back in the Senate? Where does it fit in there?
Well, I think it's that second part you said. We've gotten a lot of work done in a divided Senate. You know this. I mean, we've got foster
Hmm.
care fixed. We got our concealed carry back, if you can believe that, under McAuliffe. And then last year, I was able to get the tax break for our veterans done. This year, I got fentanyl labeled as a weapon of terror out of divided chambers.
Do you think
And
we can
so
get fentanyl, punishments for people who deal this poison,
that's
in the
what
next
that's what
one?
we got done this year, Joe. I got that done.
I mean,
So
are they going away?
it's a separate and distinct charge.
Okay.
So it's classified. We originally had it as a class 2 felony. I could not get it out of the Senate as a class 2, so now it's a class 4. But if you're dealing fentanyl with the intent to sell and distribute, this will be a separate charge for you. But it'll also give some greater teeth to the Attorney General to go after not just those who do it, but the suppliers that
Oh
want to
yeah.
supply,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
he can track it back to the Chinese and to the drug cartels. And here's the thing: if you'll notice now, the federal government's actually trying to catch up to the states. I know there's some colleagues of mine that serve in the House of Representatives where I think it was even Morgan Griffin, Representative
Hmm.
Griffin was carrying something. And I know in talking with Marco Rubio and some of my other colleagues that are a level higher than me in the U.S. Senate, they're talking about carrying a bill to make it a weapon of terror as well.
Well, yeah, appreciate it, Bryce. So he has endorsed your reelection campaign. Actually, he also endorsed our next guest, who's coming up, John McGuire, who's coming up as well. And does the governor take a chance when he gets weighs into some of these? Standard operating procedure for politicians is not to weigh into nominating processes.
You're absolutely correct, unless it's a sure thing. Like he came out with a list of those who didn't have any opposition, so that's kind of an easy endorsement, right? But I think this governor wants to win, and he's willing to go and pick his team that he wants to win with because we're proven entities that actually get things done. And I think that says a lot about our governor. I really do. I mean, my greatest challenge now is getting through this primary and then helping out those districts to get us to the majority as the minority whip. And we have a pathway to get there. All my colleagues are rowing in the same direction, hand in hand with the House. I mean, I talk to my counterpart in the House, Delegate Weber, probably about every other day about what race here, how can we help here. We have different folks going different places to try to help our other candidates. I think I'm first in the queue. I think McGuire's on the same date, May 6th, is our party. I have a primary. I think
Convention.
John has a convention.
Hmm.
But that we get a whole extra month to go out and try to help.
I appreciate it. He is State Senator Bryce Reeves, currently the 17th district. He's going to have to change his Gmail handle because he has certainly been there. One of the closest races to get into the state senate has risen up to leadership there and endorsed by Governor Youngkin for his reelection campaign, and now the 28th district. Bryce, thank you, sir, and you have a great afternoon.
Joe, you as well, and wish me luck. I just adopted a pet from the pound today.
Oh, yeah, what
So
kind?
if you heard some whining over there, it's him in the crate. And
Oh, I thought it was your campaign manager.
no,
Okay.
no. The dog has way too many teeth. I mean, he's vicious. My campaign manager's a softie.
So what kind of breed?
It's a Belgian Malinois.
Okay, you've got me on that one. You've stumped the DJ now.
You've never heard of a Belgian Malinois?
I by the end of the show, I will have figured it out. It's this wonderful research library called Google.
Yeah, you Google that and you'll see how they jump with SEAL teams and they jump with
Wow.
Delta Force, and they're an amazing service animal.
And you got him as a puppy? I mean, or are you gonna
6 years old, and I actually trained with him about 5 years ago.
Oh,
And
really?
there's a whole story to it, and one of these days I'll tell you all about it. In fact, I'll text you to your cell phone some of the things this dog does, and you'll be amazed.
All right, very good, sir. Well, I appreciate it. At some point, he may have he may have his own election campaign then, if it sounds like it. But Bryce Reeves, thank you, sir. You have a great afternoon.
Joe, thank you. See ya.
And as said, coming up next, we're going to visit with currently Delegate John McGuire, and he is running now for a 10th Senate district in the Virginia Senate. And again, with the very, very narrow, I think it's 2-seat now, majority for the Democratic Party, with a couple of the special elections, Jennifer McClellan being elected into the U.S. House of Representatives and taking that seat in the 4th congressional district. There have been some special elections, and so the Democratic Party has a 2-seat majority. But one of the interesting things, and this is a relatively wonky parliamentary procedure, however, in the Senate, currently the rules state that whoever the majority party is can write the rules that they want. And currently in this majority, what you have are committees, and in some cases even subcommittees, that are heavily weighted to the Senate Democratic Party side. So even though there have been votes, for example, on the mandatory mask regulations in Virginia schools, where when it got to the Senate floor, there were Democratic Party members like Chap Peterson and Morrissey that sided with the governor for his desire to lift some of these draconian mandates, but many things never even got out of committee because of a very quick 9-3 vote along party lines. And I think at some point there has to be some addressment to that as as we look at the future, because I think even if you look in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, not that they're someplace that you should be turning for examples of good leadership, but at least there the committees are relatively straightforwardly set up, where you've got a little bit of one side, a little bit of another side, equally split, and then the chair generally has the extra vote there, and so you can at least protect the voice of the minority, which is what Representative Republic is set up to do, is protect the voice of the minority there. And joining us from the campaign trail now to talk about also he receiving an endorsement from Governor Youngkin is John McGuire, who's just connecting. So we'll give John a second to do that. Also, we talked with Governor Youngkin earlier today, and we'll get you some of the highlights of it, but he's getting ready to head off to Taiwan. We talked a little bit about that. And also, we talked a little bit about his frustration. There was a bill that would have given parents more control over what their kids were seeing, doing, etc., on the internet and through social media and places like that, and they stood in the way of that, as well as stood in the way of a reform that would have continued to require the parole board to let victims of violent crime know when the person who committed the crime and is now incarcerated might be getting let out. So let's see if John is with us. John, are you there, sir? No, he is not yet. He is still connecting. So the other point I wanted to bring up from what I thought was a very interesting turn of phrase, if you're wondering who might be some of the nominees looking for gubernatorial nominations, since the body politic seems consumed with this idea that Governor Youngkin is just all Governor Youngkin is doing is running for president. He's not really governing Virginia. He's just running for president. Well, I think we got a little look at what's going to happen in 2025, pardon me, when the gubernatorial derby comes up, because LeVar Stoney of Richmond has taken a shot at Governor Youngkin for doing what governors had been doing for decades, which is going through parole or felons who have petitioned the governor for a restoration of rights. And it's a process, that's gone on for years. Tim Kaine did it. Mark Warner did it. Then Terry McAuliffe decided that was no longer sufficient for him. So he just did a mass restoration of rights, only to find out that huge numbers of these folks who had their voting rights restored, many of them were back in jail, and several of them were actually on the FBI's most wanted list. So the Governor Northam continued to do the mass amnesties through COVID under the excuse of, well, it's COVID, and so they decided maybe that he should just keep doing it, and that's what LeVar Stoney is mad about, because Governor Youngkin has gone back to the usual order. Delegate John McGuire is on with us. John, thank you for joining us, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine. We can't see you, but, then again, I'm usually a radio guy, so being able to see, I still am baffled why people would actually want to see me, but it's okay for that, and I appreciate it. Oh, there he is. There's Delegate McGuire. John, congratulations on the endorsement, Governor Youngkin endorsing you for your campaign in the Senate, and take us into, did he say anything specific to you when he said that he was going to be endorsing you in your primary race for Senate District 10?
Well, to be absolutely honest, I was surprised. I had no idea. I thought we were going to be talking about one particular piece of legislation yesterday, and I was ready to.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. We got time.
That's what I thought. I thought Governor Youngkin was going to talk to me about a piece of legislation.
Oh, okay.
But instead, he said, I appreciate all your hard work in the General Assembly. We've got a lot of things done together, but just about everything that we would want as conservatives, I've carried those bills and they've gotten through the House, they get over to the state Senate, and then they kill them. One of them is my parental rights bill. I tried to return power back to parents because parents should have a say on how their children are educated. And I would say quite a few Democrats said parents don't have their children's best interest. Can you believe that? And so I said, I don't care what program you come up with, what law you pass, no one will ever love a child more than their parents. And then I held up some slides where they were teaching in one of our schools that Antifa and Black Lives Matter are patriotic organizations. And then, of course, some of the radical Democrats got a little upset with me and said, did you know they used to teach KKK was patriotic? And I said, no, I didn't know that, and that's wrong. And I said, if you had a child in school today and they were teaching your child KKK was patriotic, like they're teaching Black Lives Matter is patriotic, you'd want to know. And they still killed my bill. So my goal is that, I'll win 23 days of May 6th convention. I'll win the nomination. I'll work really hard and try to help as many other Republicans win across Virginia. We'll get a Republican majority in the House, we'll maintain it, get the Republican majority in the state Senate. And then, as you know, we're going to un-California, Virginia and get some of these initiatives passed.
Well, and for the 6 years where, after the 2016 election, there were an awful lot of members of the majority parties. And at that time, the Republican Party was the majority in the House and the Senate, John. But there were a lot of retirees at that point. There were a lot of people who said, you know what, I don't want to run for a re-election. I'm not going to do it. And for whatever reason, most of them never said, I don't want to be asked about Donald Trump anymore, but it seemed to be that was the case, and the party didn't really come up with a bench to address that and to get more candidates in there. Is this going to be a situation we're seeing a lot of retirees there, John, where we can get enough gumption to undo some of the gun regulation, the Kathy Tran abortion up till cresting kind of legislation, get that undone?
The one thing I would say is that this year we have really good candidates. One of the things that I would say Governor Youngkin and RPV have done is they've worked across the state of Virginia, and we have some really good candidates. So I think that if we all stick together as Republicans, President Trump said we're good at eating our own, and he said the Democrats stick together. But if we can put our petty differences aside and think about the bigger picture, I think we've got a good chance of maintaining the House, maybe gaining, and getting that Republican state Senate. You probably know in 2017, when I ran for the House of Delegates, we had a blue wave. We lost 15 Republicans in the House.
I know.
And if you really remember, it was the grace of God. We got a majority. You remember David Yancey?
Yes.
So basically what happened, folks, is we had a tie race in the House of Delegates. And if that doesn't tell you every vote counts, nothing will. But what they did was they took a Republican name, put it in a film canister, and they put a Democrat name in another film canister. They put it in a bowl. I think it was one of those Thomas Jefferson bowls. I don't know. But anyway, reached in there and they pulled it out. And by the grace of God, it was a Republican name, David Yancey, and we maintained the majority in the House of Delegates. But if you remember that many of our races, many of the Democrat seats were not contested.
Right.
And Republicans across Virginia are like, what do you want to lose? And so the big thing I think that Rich Anderson and Governor Youngkin has really pushed is to make sure we contest every race on Virginia. Don't give them anything. But I think the key is going to be have good candidates. And I think we have some good candidates.
Well, and certainly, I've taken some criticism for this because, and John, you and I have talked about this, the redistricting of Virginia's House of Delegates and Senate districts, we did everything wrong. However, it seems like these districts aren't so bad. I guess it's proof that you can do everything wrong and it not turn out so horrifically bad as it could John. But that being said, I think a lot of the districts, perhaps the 10th district notwithstanding, are relatively competitive. I have people saying that if and I'm going to steal this phrase because my commentariat friends on the left all like to say wrong candidate. I mean, they use it. They say it about Herschel Walker. They say it about Mehmet Oz. Oh, they just picked the wrong candidate. But if, for example, in Virginia's 11th Senate district, I'm hearing people say if they pick the wrong candidate, a Republican could even win that seat. because it now includes Amherst and Nelson and some more conservative areas south of Charlottesville. So with some hard work, I think this could be an interesting election for Governor Youngkin's agenda anyway.
I think you're right. I got to say, I've knocked on in 2021, with a lot of help and a lot of prayers, I won the Democrat precincts in my district. And when I knocked on a Democrat door, the whole family would come to the door and say, "We're all Democrats. We're going to vote for you. Do you want to know why?" And I was like, "Yes, why?" And they said, "It's your 5th time knocking on our door." So I'm just trying to make you laugh, but I think the answer is you got to wear them out. You got to work hard. And that's what, having a good candidate. I will say that these districts were drawn by an organization out of California, which makes no sense to me. But they made those lines. I don't know what issue the Democrats could win on if you have a legitimate argument, because everything's more expensive. They've defunded, demeaned our police. They put dangerous criminals on the streets. The fentanyl, the open borders are impacting every county, city, and town in Virginia. I just don't know what they could win on. So if we have the right candidate with the right attitude and the right effort, and everybody, every conservative, every Republican gets involved, we're going to win the House, win the Senate, and we're going to un-California, Virginia. We're going to roll back those red flag laws. We're going to untie Virginia from California emissions regulations. Who would have thought we would have abdicated our responsibilities to legislators in California we didn't vote for? And we're going to protect life and do everything else we need to do.
Well, let me ask you about that, because when you look at, when you talk about issues, issue by issue, and engaging the population, I think Governor Youngkin's election in 2021 really is exemplar of that. The parents and education really was never an issue that Republicans went, and certainly not in places like Loudoun County and Fairfax County. You didn't go there at all and campaign as a Republican because it was considered a waste of time, and you certainly didn't take on the school teachers and the school unions and the school boards, and he did both of those. And I think is it an example of that's a winning formula, John, and not to be afraid of those issues?
Oh, yeah. I think Governor Youngkin is teaching Republicans in Virginia how to win. When he had a CRT rally in Loudoun County during his election, he invited one elected official to speak at that massive rally, and that was me. And I got there and spoke about how our children should be number one, and under radical Democrat policies, our children in Virginia have been last. If you remember, they got rid of advanced diplomas and advanced classes because they were racist. And what they were really saying is they want Virginia students to be last, and they wanted less competitive with 49 other states. So I got up there and gave a speech about that. And when the speech was over, I noticed a massive amount of suburban moms coming over to talk to me. And they said, "We're Democrat suburban moms, and we're voting for Youngkin." And then I was like, you know what? I think he can win. I mean, of course, I thought he could win. I endorsed him, but I really thought he could win after that moment.
Well, and the last one, I'm going to get you in trouble here a little bit, and you can and I will give you the hall pass to demure, but you are a Navy SEAL, so I don't think that's necessarily in your background. The Senate 10th District includes one county in Virginia called Buckingham. Buckingham has made news because I think some of the folks in the League of Women Voters and Common Cause convinced the registrar and some of the registrar's officials to quit because, interestingly, before the story ever made it to the local news, it was on NBC Nightly News that all the registrars under these allegations of scurrilous and unfounded allegations of voter fraud and blah, blah, blah. And I said to this audience on Monday, and I've said it time and again, if you want to know where the voter fraud was, it was the fraudulent idea that we could go to Walmart and we could go to the ABC stores, but we couldn't go into a polling place. And that begins the fraud. But address the Buckingham County issue with judges appointing registrars and election officials right now. Is there a concern in your campaign about what's going on there?
So I haven't gotten too involved in that issue, but I know a little bit about it. So let me try. So we have, when there's a Democrat governor, you get 2 Democrats and 1 Republican.
Yeah.
Now we have a Republican governor. So you get to have 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. So obviously someone's got to go. However, I think that the GOP chair is going to be vindicated. And I can send you evidence, Joe. It just came out they found voter fraud, where they found early vote, and a large number of folks that voted early were from people outside the county. So
Oh my.
I got that evidence sent to me. Do you know Clarabelle Wheeler?
Yes, I do very well. As a matter of fact, she was the hand that picked Mr. Yancey's name, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's a good piece of information I didn't know. Well, anyway, I've heard she's looked at the evidence as well. And I think the folks in Buckingham are going to be vindicated. You know, my heart goes out to people in Buckingham. I mean, some people don't get all the information. They don't understand the rules that you have to have 2 Republicans and 1
Right.
Democrat public governor. So I can understand people are upset about that, but you have to follow the law. And you have to think about these stories you're talking about in the media. I mean, the media normally, except for Joe Thomas,
Thank
the
you.
media,
Thank you.
media isn't always on the Republican side. Agree?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You know, and it used to be, and I don't have a problem with a media that's just on the other side of an elected official. If it's all elected officials should be viewed with a certain amount of circumspect, I'm fine with that because that's what you chose when you wanted to serve the public. But I definitely think that there has been a transition to just being in the cool kids club over the last 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, again, I think that people have lost trust. They've lost trust in our elections. They've lost trust in our school system. They've lost trust with our FBI and our politicians. We need to rebuild trust. And Governor Youngkin's that type of leader. A good leader brings people together and leads them to a better place. He does not want to be second place, third place, fourth place in anything in Virginia. He wants Virginia to be best in class in everything: best schools, best jobs, best, lowest tax rate. Bring your business here. I mean, he's a hard worker, and it's an honor working with him and my fellow Republicans to try to make Virginia the best place to live, work, and raise your family in peace. And I'm looking forward to winning this convention 23 days from now, so we can finish what we started, so that we can get those bills that keep dying in the Senate to the governor's desk and make Virginia the best.
It's McGuire for Virginia. The word "for" is spelled out, if I'm not mistaken, John. And it's a turnout game. Are you prepared? Do you have the ground game? Most people, unfortunately, are going to hear about primary elections, and they're going to call up and say, "Where do I go to vote?" And the delegates have already been chosen. How has that portion of your campaign been going? And do you feel they'll turn out in 28 days?
So this is a convention. If you haven't already signed up to be a delegate to be able to vote May 6th. So we have a universe of about 2,400 people. It's a little bit less than that. And there's no question I have the lion's share of the delegates in almost all 10 counties. But overall, I have the lion's share. So that doesn't mean I can get cocky, because like you said, if they don't show up, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So we definitely have a lead. It's not a big lead. So we need everyone to show up. But if everyone shows up, I will be the nominee. I'll win Senate District 10, and I'll continue fighting and serving the people in the Senate District 10. It'd be an honor.
So the last one for you, I'm going to tap back into your Navy SEAL background, John, because you talk about all this chaos, and we talk about losing faith in the FBI and losing faith in the electoral system and losing faith. You've served in a lot of places with tyrannical despots have taken over, generally based on the idea of chaos and lack of faith in institutions. So the strong, whether it's Saddam Hussein or you name Muammar Gaddafi, these places have been taken over by petty despots and dictators, mainly because the communities, their countries have lost faith in those systems. And that's where I feel our peril is, because we're teetering on that, John. Talk about addressing that real quick before we have to let you go.
Well, I think you're right. I think Marxism, they should not call it the Democrat Party anymore. It should be called the Marxist or Communist Party. They've skipped over socialism. And, like Youngkin said, we should be taught how to think, not what to think. And so we need to expose Marxist ideology everywhere we see it, in our education system, in our business system. You see where they've got the social credit thing with some of these businesses now?
Oh, yes.
We have to expose it. By the way, what did you think about Kid Rock taking a machine gun to the Bush beer.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if you've seen Delegate Nick Freitas. I think we played the video here on Monday or Tuesday, but I thought Delegate Nick Freitas had the best answer to it. He does these Instagram posts, and he said, "So it's a man who's pretending to be a woman, selling water, pretending to be beer." Seems to be a nice fit, So yeah, if you can mock them, I find that sometimes mockery is the thing they can't stand the most.
Yeah, it's like they want you to play make believe, and if you don't agree with the make believe, you're a bad person.
Right.
But I'm a Christian. I get my principles from the Bible. I'm pretty simple. I just follow that, and I'm good to go.
Well, I appreciate it, John McGuire. It's McGuire for Virginia.com. 28 days to go. Virginia Senate 10th district. I just had the map pulled up here and I put it away because I got out over my skis too much, cocky, like you said, John. You have a great afternoon.
God bless you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And coming up in a little bit, the author of a book called The Authoritarians is going to be on with us. And unusual about this program. And that'll be better. So sorry about that. Somebody shut my microphone off. They didn't want me paraphrasing Nick Freitas, but it's a man pretending to be a woman promoting water that's pretending to be beer. And in the issue with Buckingham County, that we brought up with John McGuire, there's a point of order in this where the authoritarians, and I'll use that as a segue into our next guest in a moment. The idea of you having to, they want you to remain subservient. They have to convince you to stop arguing with them because John McGuire is right. If you go into a discussion with facts, with information, with your passion, with truth, and you're not trying to just win. Because believe me, I have plenty of conversations with people that I feel like I'm giving a deposition. I really do. Have you ever taken a lie detector test? And you sit down and they put the blood pressure cuff on you and they put some diodes on your arm and they mess around for a little bit. And then they start asking you the questions. And they ask you the same question 6 or 7 different ways. And they'll have about 20 questions and they'll rewrite them slightly to see if you come up with a different answer. And if you do, then you're lying and you don't get the job, you don't get the security clearance, whatever it may be. Or in the case of an FBI interview, you do 10 to 20 in Leavenworth or 5 to 10 in Woolworth. And that's where we find ourselves right now with the issue of voter fraud. So the Buckingham County Registrar apparently called NBC Nightly News, and they didn't have anything else going on. So they said, sure, why not? Let's put on this story out of Buckingham County, Virginia. And the only other time I've ever heard Buckingham County, Virginia specifically mentioned was in the documentary series Tiger King, because one of the characters, not the main two, but one of the characters, Doc, oh gosh, I can't remember what Doc's last name was, but he had lived in Yogaville for some time as a resident, and so I'm watching this show, and it's already a dumpster fire. It's already, these people are just, my gosh, this is worse than Seinfeld with people I would never want to be like. And all of a sudden they start talking about Doc Antiel, and they start talking about Buckingham, and I'm thinking, oh God, no, don't say Charlottesville. Oh God, don't say Charlottesville, because at that point Charlottesville had the 2017 riots. The city of Charlottesville had taken enough national black eyes that it didn't need another one. So they start talking about it, and they mentioned that he was from Buckingham, Virginia. I'm like, oh, thank you for saying Buckingham and not Charlottesville. That made me very happy. The folks in Buckingham, the registrar's office, apparently called NBC Nightly News, and NBC Nightly News. We still have that web video, the video of the newscast, and the Buckingham folks had called NBC News, and they said, well, let's get somebody involved, and no, it's not that one. It's not that one. Don't worry about it, and we'll get something else in there, and we'll get something else going on here, and that's what we need to do. That's what we want to do. Shut that down. We don't need it anymore, and please, thank you, and thank you. Oh my gosh, that was an act of Congress. Actually, I think getting an act through Congress was better than that. This is it. So there you see what I was talking about is that these folks are, oh, well, it's baseless claims, and it's unproven, unsubstantiated rumor mongering, even though, as John McGuire told us, we do have evidence of some of voter irregularities, people from not within the county voting in the county. Sounds to me like voter fraud. But they want to continue the narrative. The point is that, like the old National Enquirer magazines. You remember the National Enquirer, where they would where they would talk about Bat Boy being seen in some small rural town in Oregon that they knew that 99.9% of the country had never ever been to. So they find a county like Buckingham County in Virginia, where 99.9% of the population had never ever been to, and they said, okay, let's make them our our guinea pig for this. Let's make them the group that we're going to say is seeing these baseless claims, because nobody's going to go to Buckingham County. Nobody knows anything about Buckingham County enough to say, "Oh, hold it, I know that's a lie," so that they can make the plausible deniability that they are telling the truth. This is so that they can continue to keep you from saying anything. So if you see somebody that's not supposed to be voting somewhere, and you say, "Hold it, that might be voter fraud." "Oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, aren't you?" And that's how they get you to stop pushing back on their agenda, and they say, "Oh, it's baseless claims of voter fraud." Well, it's not baseless claims, and then it became unsubstantiated claims, which is another legal term for that. So joining us now is a guy who knows a thing or two about substantiated claims and what they look like, I appreciate his time for us here. He is Jonathan Emord. He is a constitutional expert there. And Jonathan, thank you so much for taking some time out with us this afternoon. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great, Joe. Good to be with you.
Just kicked off a Senate campaign. You can see his website there, emord4va.com. Jonathan, so talk about what we were just talking about, is how they get good constitutional people who just want every valid voter to cast one valid vote to stop talking. We see it in this Buckingham County case where they just use the boilerplate unsubstantiated claims, and then that seems to be sufficient to keep anyone from arguing with them on whether or not a bunch of people from apparently not even within the municipality wound up voting in the municipality, which is, as far as I could tell, against the law, Jonathan.
Yes, so you end up with this conundrum that is created when you have a voter fraud situation. So fraud, let's assume fraud happens. Let's assume that somebody commits voter fraud. You have anonymous voting, which is universal in the United States. So you don't have the ability to audit the fraudulent vote back to the person who committed the fraud. So you end up with this extraordinarily difficult proof situation. You can see that there are, say, more ballots that are counted than there are actual people who are registered to vote. But when it comes to proving that a specific person voted unlawfully, when you have an anonymous voting system, or when you have ballot harvesting, or when you have no valid ID verification for ballots that are coming in the mail, you end up with fraud happening, but fraud that by its nature in this system is virtually impossible for anyone who's challenging to prove happened in a specific instance. As a consequence, you can't win, right? You see all these suits, they don't win. The solution has to be legislative, and it has to be a system of validation that eliminates the anonymity for the purposes of validation, not for public, but for the purposes of validation and auditing, such that when you vote, at the time that you vote, biometric methods can be used to validate that you are who you say you are, you come from this address, you have the residence criteria, you are an American citizen, you are entitled to vote. Bingo, you vote. Then a system of auditing that is done simultaneously with the voting, constantly auditing it automatically, looking for any unusual situation where one person votes in two different jurisdictions, or you've got a situation where people with the same name are voting multiple times, whatever, and it catches it, right? And it invalidates it to the extent that it cross-references back to who is the real voter, what is their actual address, who is the citizen, and then validates it. All right, the argument against that they've raised is that it discriminates against minorities in some way, right? That it
okay.
And the reality is there is no discrimination. It is colorblind system. If you use it for validation of everybody's address without regard to their race or their ethnicity or whatever, that's the best system to ensure the integrity of it.
Jonathan Emord is on with us, emord4va.com, but he's the author, best-selling author of the book The Authoritarians, and we were talking earlier about faith in the system, and this is part and parcel of that faith in the system. We don't believe elections are legitimate anymore. We don't believe law enforcement's authority is legitimate, and I think it all starts with elections, Jonathan. We don't believe the elected officials are there legitimately, so therefore the law enforcement that enforces the laws, even when they do write them themselves, are not legitimate, and we continue to watch these fissures grow in the system. This only benefits, in my mind, the authoritarian, because then once chaos ensues, we will all gleefully vote for Julius Caesar to come and make sense of it all.
Well, it's the Marxist dream to destroy the integrity of an election system. The only ones who want a election system that has integrity are those who believe in a republic or those who believe in democracy. But those who believe in authoritarianism want us as individual citizens to so doubt the integrity of our governance system that we do not participate and it collapses. And they want us to be up in arms over the whole system. So this feeds into it, and it does so in spades. That's why with a far left government in California, they are inviting every means by which you can completely eliminate any integrity in the voting system, by all the ballot harvesting, by the mass mailing of votes to ballots to every citizen, and then allowing those things to be harvested and grouped by political groups and submitted. You completely destroy the integrity of one person, one vote. You completely destroy the integrity, the validity of an election with a system like that.
Wow.
And this whole system universally, on a national level, they tried to do that very same thing with this voting bill, where they wanted to federalize against the Constitution, federalize the voting process in America, and authorize mass mail-in balloting.
Is part of this that you talk about biometrics. The original biometric is I'm in person with you. And I think, as we watched the president grudgingly sign the House Joint Resolution ending COVID-19's emergency restrictions, as one of my listeners on the radio show said, where's the ticker tape parade? But now that that's over, the premise was we can't be in person with each other because we're either going to kill somebody with our COVID or we're going to kill somebody with our guns. Talk about that, Jonathan, where you can actually have a reasonable conversation with somebody and be in person and turn in your ballots to them. Mm-hmm.
Validation. They are here, they are voting. The biometric system works well for larger communities and enables us to have that same kind of validation. It's the same thing at the airport with the CLEAR system that they use at the airport with biometrics, where they validate that a person is an American citizen, not a terrorist, and is a person who's eligible to get on an airplane. Well, that same system of biometrics can be used, and it can be done in a way that ensures that there's automatic auditing and that oversight can happen in real time. And that enables us to have far greater control over the election process in ensuring integrity. What we have, the problem with the reality is now that on the local level, you've got partisans, particularly Democrat partisans in many jurisdictions, who are apparently enabling activity that can cause the integrity of the elections to be called into question. I'm sure this may happen in some Republican precincts too, but the reality is that we've seen quite a bit of it in Democrat precincts in urban areas, and yet again you have this conundrum where the proof, as I said, you have more ballots submitted than there are actual voters in a jurisdiction. And, what do you do about that, right?
Oh, there I am. Yeah. So So we have to win over the House and Senate so we can put back some of these ridiculous laws and give them back to the states. Jonathan, how is your campaign going before we have to go?
Fantastic. We are speaking all over the state. We're receiving very strong positive receptions everywhere we're going. And in fact, people want to have specific solutions to problems. I've heard over and over again, gee, I'm supporting you because you provide specific legislative solutions to these problems. You're not just grieving over how bad things are, but you actually have the solutions to bring. And so, yes, that's been a positive thing. We are greatly appreciative of all the support all across the state. I got to tell you, Virginia is a great state. It is a powerful state. People are intelligent, and they're angry, and they're sick of being treated like second-class citizens, and they want their rights protected, and they want to know that their kids are safe at school, and they want to know that crime is being properly arrested and prosecuted. And these are universal characteristics that exceed party. And
Okay.
what I'm finding is that a lot of people are sick and tired of Tim Kaine solely because he has been behind a lot of this that they don't like. They don't like the transitioning movement going on with kids in the schools. They don't like the CRT stuff going on in the schools. They don't like the weakness of the American military and no standing up for American military, the woke aspect that they're introducing into the military. There's a lot here that is ruinous to our great country. And in 2 to 3 years, if we don't reverse this course, the consequences of it will be so profound that I'm afraid we could very well lose what we've understood our whole lives to be our wonderful country. That's why I'm in this race. So
I appreciate it. Well, and thank you, because certainly we recall that when Rome fell and Caesar took over, he kept the Senate around just for looks. But you have a wonderful afternoon, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us.
thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Now, as I said, we can do something that a lot of these shows don't do, and let's take phone calls at 434-964-1075. And thank you for checking in on the Afternoon Constitutional. Who's this? Hello?
Yeah. Are you there, Joe?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm here. Who's this?
This is Terry with First Line Media. I'm calling about your interview with Dr. Forlano yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're a booking agent. I'm looking for listeners calling in here, but appreciate it. And hang on the line, Terry. We can talk. We'll have my people. We'll call her people, and we'll get with that in a second. I thought that was a listener calling in there, but that is how it works. So if you do ever want to call in to the program, that's how we will do it here in the days and months to come. That being said, it is time for us to go, and I say that only because the honey-do list is long, so I don't want to offend the actual supervisor of the Afternoon Constitutional. For you, thank you for watching, and thank you for tuning in, and we will be back here I think on Tuesday. We have some traveling that we have to do, so we will be back here on Tuesday, and I appreciate it on behalf of the Government Accountability and Oversight Group, and for Monticello Media and WCHV and Mrs. Thomas and you for receiving all this. Until tomorrow, again, I did it again. It's a crutch. Until Tuesday at 3, so long, and thanks for all the fish.